The picture frame slipped from Olivia's hands and hit the floor, the sound echoing through the quiet mansion. Her knees went weak as her eyes stayed locked on the photo. The little girl in it had the same smile, the same dimple, and the same tiny birthmark near her left ear. It couldn't be, yet deep inside she knew it was. The child she had buried in her heart 20 years ago was staring back at her from this billionaire's wall. But before she could move or breathe, a small voice came from behind her, soft but clear. She came from the fire. Olivia turned slowly, her heart heavy. The billionaire's son, Brain, stood in the doorway holding his toy car, looking at her with innocent eyes. "How do you know that?" she whispered. The boy looked down and said, "Because Mommy told me." Her breath caught. The photo slipped from her trembling hand and fell again on the cold floor. She crouched down, gently picking it up, her fingers brushing against the glass. Her hands shook so badly she could hardly hold it steady. She looked again at the child's face. The photo was old, slightly faded, but clear enough for her to see every detail. That face lived in her dreams every night, the face of the baby she had lost in the fire. Rain poured outside, tapping against the tall windows of the mansion. The sky looked heavy, gray, and restless, as if the world itself was trying to remind her of the past. Olivia's chest tightened, and her eyes filled with tears she had spent years learning how to hide. She wanted to ask more, but the boy had already turned and walked away, leaving her alone with the photo and a heart that felt ready to break. Olivia sat there on the floor for a long time, unable to move. Her thoughts went far back to that night in Texas, the night everything ended. It had been raining that night too. She had been 25, a single mother living in a small wooden house outside Dallas. Her daughter, Emily, had just turned 1. Olivia remembered wrapping her baby in a soft blanket, humming a song, and watching her fall asleep. It had been peaceful until the smell of smoke filled the room. She thought it was from outside at first, but when she opened the kitchen door, the flames were already there, crawling up the walls like hungry beasts. She screamed, ran for Emily, but the fire spread too fast. The smoke made it hard to see or breathe. She covered her mouth, tried to reach the crib, but the heat pushed her back. Neighbors heard her cries and called for help. She stood outside, rain soaking her clothes, screaming her baby's name until her voice broke. When the firefighters finally came, the house had already collapsed. They searched for hours, but found no body. They told her the fire was electrical, that no one could have survived. Olivia had collapsed on the wet ground that night, her heart shattered beyond repair. The world had gone silent after that. The memory faded as another tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it quickly and took a deep breath. She had spent 20 years trying to live again, working in hospitals, shelters, anywhere that would take her. Slowly, life had started to look bearable again. Then this job came. When she first arrived at Nathan Jones's mansion, she thought it was just another chance to start over. The house was huge, quiet, filled with marble floors and tall chandeliers. The walls looked untouched, like they belonged in a museum. Nathan Jones, the owner, was a wealthy man known across Texas. He lived there with his young son, Brain. His wife had passed away a few years earlier, and the house, despite its beauty, felt empty. Olivia had been hired to clean, to stay silent, and to keep her head down. She didn't mind. She needed the job, not questions. Mrs. Clark, the head housekeeper, had shown her around that first day with a cold expression. "You do your job, you get paid," she said. Olivia nodded. She understood rules better than anyone. Days turned into weeks, and Olivia got used to the silence of the mansion. Every morning she arrived early, dusted the grand staircase, wiped the furniture, and cleaned the long hallways. Each corner of the house looked perfect, almost too perfect, as if nobody truly lived there. She rarely saw Nathan, who spent most of his time locked in his office or away on business trips. But she often saw his son, Brain. Brain was quiet, shy, and different from most children. He barely spoke and often stayed alone in the garden or in his room. Yet somehow, he always seemed to notice Olivia. At first, he would peek from behind doors as she worked. Then he started sitting in the same room quietly while she cleaned. She never said much to him, just smiled sometimes. One day, she started humming softly while dusting the bookshelves. It was an old lullaby she used to sing to her daughter. She didn't even realize she was doing it until she saw Brain sitting on the floor, smiling faintly as he listened. That small smile gave her peace she hadn't felt in years. Since then, she would hum every morning while working, and Brain would stay close, sometimes following her from room to room. It became their quiet routine. Everything stayed calm until that afternoon, the day she found the picture. Olivia had been cleaning the main living room. The storm outside had made the sky dark, and the sound of thunder rolled softly in the distance. She moved a large vase to clean beneath it, and that's when the frame fell out. She picked it up without thinking, wiped the dust, and froze. The moment her eyes met the photo, the air left her lungs. It was a picture of a little girl, maybe 5 years old. She was wearing a pink ribbon in her hair and smiling in a way that pierced Olivia's heart. The same face, the same features, the same eyes she saw every time she closed hers. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. That was when Brain's voice came. She came from the fire. Now, sitting alone with the photo still in her hand, Olivia felt something inside her awaken. She didn't understand how it could be true, but she knew she couldn't ignore it. The girl in the picture wasn't just a random child. Deep down, she knew what her heart was trying to say. Outside, thunder rumbled again, and the wind shook the windows. Olivia stood up slowly, clutching the photo against her chest. Her eyes moved toward the stairs that led to Nathan's office. A part of her wanted to run straight to him and demand answers, but she stopped herself. She needed proof, not emotion. She took one last look at the picture, tracing the little girl's smile with her thumb, then carefully placed it back where it had fallen. Her hands were still shaking, but her face looked calm now, almost cold. Something had started, something she couldn't turn away from. The truth was in this house, and she could feel it waiting for her in the quiet corners and old boxes. She whispered softly to herself, "If she's really mine, I'll find out." The storm outside grew louder, and the mansion seemed to sigh as if it knew what was coming. Olivia didn't know it yet, but this was the night everything in her life was about to change again. The night after Olivia found the picture, she could not sleep. She lay on her bed in the small room the mansion had given her, staring at the ceiling. The sound of rain still came through the window, soft and endless. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the little girl's face again. The same smile, the same eyes, the same feeling that took her back 20 years in time. She turned from side to side, trying to silence her thoughts, but it was useless. The words that Brain said kept repeating in her head. She came from the fire. She sat up, holding her blanket close, breathing slowly. Her hands still trembled. She knew there had to be more. Something about that house felt like it was calling her to look deeper. The next morning, Olivia woke up early before the other workers arrived. The mansion was still quiet, the hallways empty. The golden light of dawn came through the large windows, touching the floors gently. She started her cleaning as usual, trying to look calm, but her mind was heavy. As she wiped the shelves and dusted the frames, she noticed things she hadn't before. There were small details, small traces that told stories hidden behind these walls. A child's drawing tucked between old books, a tiny shoe on a high shelf, a photo frame without glass left on a table. It was as if the past had been scattered around this house, waiting for someone to notice. Mrs. Clark, the head housekeeper, walked in suddenly. Her shoes clicked on the floor, and her eyes looked sharp. "You're here early," she said in her usual cold tone. "Yes, ma'am," Olivia replied quietly. "Don't touch what you don't need to," Mrs. Clark added, walking past her. "You're here to clean, not to remember." The words stung, but Olivia didn't answer. She lowered her head and went back to cleaning. She had learned long ago that silence was safer than pride. Later that morning, Brain entered the living room where she was working. He walked slowly, holding his toy in one hand and a small blue cloth in the other. He stopped near her and looked up. His voice was soft, gray. That was what he called her, unable to say her name fully. "Yes, sweetheart," she said, smiling gently. He pointed at the cloth in his hand. "You forgot this." Olivia took it from him, touched by his small act. "Thank you," she said. But as she looked at him, she saw something else in his eyes, something thoughtful, almost sad. "Did your mommy ever tell you more about the girl in the photo?" she asked softly. Brain's eyes moved to the floor. He nodded slowly. "She said she came from the fire, but she was okay." Olivia's heart sank again. "Do you remember anything else?" she whispered. He shook his head and went back to his toys. Olivia didn't ask again. She didn't want to frighten him. But her heart was no longer quiet. Every word the boy said drew her closer to the truth. Later that afternoon, Nathan Jones came home. He walked through the main door wearing his dark blue suit, his tie loose, his face tired. He greeted no one and went straight to his office. Olivia saw him pass through the hallway and stopped what she was doing. She wanted to talk to him, but fear held her back. How could she tell a man like him something so unbelievable? He would think she was mad. Still, she needed answers. That evening, after everyone had left for the night, Olivia stayed behind to clean the study. It was large, filled with old books and dusty drawers. Nathan had left early again for a meeting, and the house was silent. Olivia moved slowly, careful not to make noise. The smell of wood polish filled the air as she wiped the shelves. Then she noticed a small box on the top shelf, half hidden behind a stack of papers. It was old and covered in dust. She hesitated, then gently pulled it down. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were some documents, letters, and a few photographs. She picked up one of the photos. It was the same little girl again, wearing the pink ribbon. Her name, written in pen on the back, was Lily Jones. Olivia felt her knees weaken. That name echoed in her chest. Lily, her daughter's name had been Emily. But when she was a baby, Olivia often called her Lily as a short name of love. She put the photo aside and looked at the papers inside the box. One of them had a logo on top that said Bright Futures Adoption Agency. Her eyes widened. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen it. She carefully placed everything back inside and closed the box. Suddenly, a voice behind her made her jump. "What are you doing?" It was Mrs. Clark. She stood by the door with her arms crossed. Her face was hard, her voice sharp. "I was just cleaning," Olivia said, trying to stay calm. Mrs. Clark stepped forward. "You don't clean with your hands inside private boxes," she said. Olivia lowered her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I'll put it back." Mrs. Clark stared at her for a long moment, then took the box from her hands. "Stay in your place, Olivia," she said firmly. "Some things in this house are not for you to know." Olivia nodded and walked away quietly, but her heart was racing. Those words told her everything she needed to hear. There was indeed something hidden here, something no one wanted her to find. When she got to her room that night, she sat on the bed and pulled out a small notebook. She wrote down everything she had seen: the photo, the name, the agency, the words Brain said. Each piece felt like part of a puzzle. She whispered to herself, "If that agency handled the adoption, there must be a record." Her hands shook as she remembered the fire, the night her baby disappeared, the years she spent searching with no proof. She had accepted her pain because she had no strength left to fight. But now, something had changed. She could feel the truth getting closer. The next morning, Olivia woke before sunrise. The mansion was quiet again. She stood by the window, watching the sky turn light gray. She didn't know what she would find next, but she had already made her choice. She would keep digging, even if it cost her the job. She whispered softly, "I lost her once. I won't lose her again." Outside, the first light of day touched the walls of the mansion. Olivia picked up her cleaning cloth and started her day, pretending everything was normal. But inside, she was no longer just a maid. She was a mother, searching for the truth that had been stolen from her. The morning came slowly, and the air around the Jones mansion felt heavier than usual. Olivia cleaned each room quietly, her mind far away. She had barely slept. All night, she kept seeing the name Bright Futures Adoption Agency written in her head. It felt like a shadow from her past, trying to speak again. She knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. The truth was close, she could feel it. Every time she looked at Brain, she saw a piece of her lost child, and that photo in her mind never left her. She wanted to talk to Nathan Jones, but fear held her back. What if he threw her out? What if he refused to listen? But she also knew that hiding the truth would hurt even more. That afternoon, the mansion was quiet. The other workers had finished and left early. Nathan was upstairs in his office. Olivia stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the closed door. Her hands felt cold and her heart was heavy. After taking a deep breath, she knocked. "Come in," Nathan's deep voice said from inside. Olivia pushed the door open slowly. Nathan sat behind his desk, papers spread across it, his tie slightly loose, his face tired. He looked up, surprised to see her. "Yes, Olivia, what is it?" "Sir, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking a little. Nathan leaned back in his chair, curious. "Go ahead." Olivia hesitated, trying to find the right words. "I know this will sound strange, but it's about your daughter, Lily." His eyes narrowed slightly. "What about her?" Olivia looked down, clutching her hands together. "I found an old photo of her yesterday, and your son Brain said something that I can't stop thinking about. He said, she came from the fire." Nathan frowned, confused. He said what? "Yes, sir," Olivia said quietly. "And when I looked at the picture, I felt something I can't explain. That child looks exactly like my daughter, the one I lost years ago in a house fire." Nathan's face hardened. He stood up slowly. "Are you suggesting that my daughter is your child?" Olivia's eyes filled with tears. "Please, sir, just listen. I know it sounds crazy, but I found a document from an agency called Bright Futures. That same agency was closed years ago for fake adoptions and missing children. I believe they took my baby after the fire, before anyone could find her." Nathan's voice rose, sharp and cold. "That's enough, Olivia. You're crossing a line. You're accusing me, and my late wife, of something impossible." "I'm not accusing you, sir," Olivia said softly, her voice trembling. "I'm only begging for a chance to find the truth. I need to know." Before Nathan could reply, Mrs. Clark entered the office suddenly. She had been listening outside. "Sir, I told you she couldn't be trusted," she said quickly. "She's been going through your private things. She's trying to cause trouble." Nathan looked between them, his face filled with anger and confusion. "Is that true?" Olivia tried to speak, but Mrs. Clark interrupted. "I caught her looking inside your personal files last night." Nathan's tone grew firm. "Olivia, I gave you this job because I believed you were honest. But this is too far. You're suspended. Leave this house immediately." Olivia's chest tightened. She wanted to explain, but he had already turned away. She nodded slowly, holding back her tears. "Yes, sir," she whispered, and walked out of the office quietly. That night, Olivia sat alone in her small apartment in town. Her hands were shaking as she held the photo she had secretly kept from the box. The same photo that had started all of this. She cried silently, her tears falling on the picture. She had lost her daughter once, and now she had lost the only chance to prove she was right. But then, after hours of sitting there, something changed. She remembered what the fire had taught her long ago. That pain only wins when you stop fighting. She stood up, wiped her tears, and whispered, "I will prove it myself." The next morning, she took the bus into the city. She went to a private DNA lab she had found online and spoke to a kind technician. She explained her story simply and asked for a test. She gave her own sample and handed over a toothbrush she had taken from the mansion, one that belonged to Brain. The technician promised to call her as soon as the results were ready. 3 days later, Olivia received an envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The result was clear. There was a 99.9% match between her and Lily Jones. Her body went weak, and she sat down slowly. The paper fell to her lap. After 20 years, the truth was no longer just a feeling in her heart. It was real. Her baby was alive. That evening, she returned to the mansion. She held the test paper in her hand tightly as she rang the bell. Mrs. Clark opened the door, her face cold. "What do you want?" she said. "I need to see Mr. Jones," Olivia replied calmly. Mrs. Clark tried to stop her, but Nathan's voice came from behind. "Let her in." Olivia walked into the office where Nathan sat again, this time with his lawyer beside him. Her steps were slow, but her eyes were steady. She placed the folded paper on the desk and said quietly, "I told you the truth, sir. Lily is my daughter." Nathan looked at the paper, then at her. The lawyer opened it and read the result out loud. The room went silent. Nathan's face turned pale. His hands trembled as he looked back at Olivia. "This can't be," he said softly. "It is," Olivia whispered. "I lost her in a fire 20 years ago, and your agency took her. I never stopped looking." Mrs. Clark gasped and stepped back, her voice shaking. "No, that's not possible." Just then, Brain ran into the room, his voice clear and strong. "She's alive, Daddy. I told you." He ran to Olivia and hugged her tightly around the waist. Nathan stood frozen, watching his son, then looking at Olivia. His voice broke a little. "My wife always said something felt wrong with the adoption. But the papers looked perfect. We believed everything the agency told us." Olivia began to cry. "You didn't know, sir. I don't blame you. I only wanted the truth." Nathan's eyes softened as tears filled them. "I'm sorry, Olivia," he said quietly. "You deserve to have her back. You deserve to be heard." Later that week, Nathan called Lily, now grown and living in another city. When she came home, Olivia waited for her in the living room. When their eyes met, both froze. Olivia showed her a small photo, the one from before the fire. Lily looked down at her own neck, where she still wore a silver necklace. It was the same one from the picture. Her eyes filled with tears. "It's true," she whispered. Olivia nodded slowly, her tears falling freely. "Your name was Emily," she said. Lily dropped the necklace, ran forward, and hugged her. The cry that came from her chest was deep and full of years of pain. Olivia held her close, crying too, whispering, "I never stopped looking for you." Nathan stood by the doorway with Brain beside him, his eyes filled with emotion. For the first time, the mansion didn't feel cold anymore. The silence that once ruled the house had turned into peace. That night, Olivia sat on the sofa holding Lily's hand, with Brain's head resting on her shoulder. She looked at the old photo one last time and smiled through her tears. The fire that once destroyed her life had now become the light that brought her family back together. Dear viewers, this story reminds us that no matter how dark life becomes, truth and love always find their way back home. Olivia lost everything in the fire, But she never stopped believing. Her pain turned into strength. Her tears became her courage. And because she refused to give up, she found the daughter she thought she had lost forever. Sometimes, life takes away what we love most, but faith can rebuild what fire destroys. This story teaches us that real family is not just about blood, it's about love, forgiveness, and the power of never giving up hope, even when the world calls it impossible. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from, and what lesson this story taught you. Did Olivia's courage touch your heart? Did her reunion with her daughter move you to tears? We would love to read your thoughts. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with others who need hope today. And if you want to see more emotional, real-life stories like this, type "more stories" in the comments, and you will be the first to get our next powerful story. Thank you for watching, dear viewers. Until next time, keep believing in love, in truth, and in second chances.